So let's jump into the latest, if you will, when it comes to the portal. And I think that the biggest news out of the portal was Kyle McCord settling on a place and a location to go and transfer. Kyle McCord, of course, the 5-star quarterback that played at Ohio State, did a great job for Ohio State for the most part. In particular, that win against Notre Dame fell short. Let's face it, for Buckeye standards, they want to go beat Michigan. You want to win the Big Ten, play in the playoff, and win the national championship, and that's not going to happen. So they lose to the number 1 team in the country by 6 on the road. And he, let's face it, with that fan base, was the target of a lot of criticism. And so because of a lot of factors, and I don't know any of them was the absolute driving force, but if you talk with people around the program, there was an idea of potentially NIL issues and guaranteed starting spot issues and so on and so forth. So he decided to go to the transfer portal. He was linked to Nebraska, took a visit there, and it looked like that was a foregone conclusion. And then all of a sudden it wasn't. And now he commits to Syracuse. So he's going to go to Syracuse. Bit interesting, let's face it. Syracuse, I don't think was on a lot of people's bingo card, in particular because I just don't know if Syracuse is going to be a playoff caliber team. And you would think that McCord would go from Ohio State and try to land at another team that he could elevate into kind of playoff caliber. So we'll see. We'll see, though, because there's a lot of momentum, right? And by the way, I do know a few people from Cuse, if you will. And so those texts were flying in. Mikey from Syracuse, he definitely texted me. My nephew loves Syracuse because when he was a kid, he loved the color orange. And then he decided that his favorite was Syracuse. And so my nephew, Josh, loves Syracuse, got a text from him. Another one of my buddies, he went to Syracuse. They're all excited, as they should be. I think that this is an upgrade for Syracuse. There's no doubt. So McCord goes there, and it begs the question, what does this mean for Ohio State? Ohio State, in a lot of ways, people were expecting them to jump in and really target and go after Cam Ward. I was even expecting it to some degree. Maybe even Maalik Murphy, and we'll get to Maalik Murphy in a little bit, the transfer from Texas. Maybe Will Howard from Kansas State. So, and yet they didn't really. So it leads you to believe that Ohio State is at least confident enough in the quarterbacks that they're going to have in for spring to allow those guys to battle it out. So you've got Lincoln Kleinholz, the freshman. You've got Devin Brown, who's going to play in their bowl game. And then you've got Aaron Nolan, who's committed to them as a high school player. And you can assume, I guess, that those three will be competing for the starting job for Ohio State. I don't think that that's a for sure. Now, that might be the case, but I don't think that's a for sure. Because remember, you're going to have another round of transfer portal when guys lose jobs in spring football. Remember, that's when Joe Burrow ended up transferring away from Ohio State, was after spring ball, loses the quarterback competition. It was a great competition, finds a spot at LSU. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that that's the case for the Buckeyes, but at least for now, it looks like Ohio State and Ryan Day, comfortable with, confident in their setup for the spring and even maybe next fall with those three. Devin Brown again, who will start the bowl game. Lincoln Kleinholz, who was there as a freshman there in Columbus. And then Aaron Nolan, who's going to, I would presume, sign in a couple of days as a high school player. So that's going on in the portal. Colorado continued to do really well in the portal. They are, at least as of right now, right there kind of 1-2 in terms of portal rankings. And then the team that's making a huge push in the transfer portal and done an excellent job is the Lane Train, Ole Miss. How about Ole Miss? Ole Miss is doing a wonderful job. They have 3 of the top 15 players right now out of the portal committed. Looks like they're the favorite for the number 1 overall player in the portal. That's Walter Nolan. And Lane, could be the portal king as we're going through this offseason. They've done an outstanding job with their collective at Ole Miss. I know really well the people involved with their collective. They do an outstanding job with their collective. Good budget, good makeup, good model, and they do an outstanding job. So they have the resources to go out and target and pull some of these resources in, and they're doing that. And Lane is obviously an effective recruiter. So Ole Miss doing outstanding things in the portal, and I'll be really surprised if they don't end up as being the number one portal class in the country when it's all said and done. More news out of the portal, and this one is a little bit more late breaking, at least in terms of when we're recording this show here, and this is late Sunday night for those of you out there. Malachi Nelson, the young quarterback for USC, is expected to enter the transfer portal after just 1 year at USC. He was a 5-star recruit. And it would, I think at least, beg the question, does he know something about USC's intentions in the transfer portal? We know that, Will Howard visited over the weekend, the Kansas State quarterback. He won the Big 12 a couple of years ago as a starting quarterback when he came in for an injured Adrian Martinez and did an outstanding job. He did a pretty good job for Kansas State this last year. He's in the portal. He visited USC. Could it be a Will Howard to USC news that is making Malachi, potentially move on? And where does he land? That's a fascinating one. And so this is ongoing here. And then you got the news, and I'm going to sit with this one a little bit. Maalik Murphy, the backup quarterback who started a few games for Texas this year, ends up in the transfer portal. And here it is, and this is what was inevitable at some point because of the nature of what we're trying to do in college football in this disastrous calendar, is you have a backup quarterback for a college football playoff team that is in the transfer portal and essentially has to bail. And it's not his fault. It's because the system is built so backwards that the calendar ends up like this. I tweeted this out, or I don't know, I sent out, a tweet. And I said, I feel terrible for Maalik Murphy. There's no way that he wants to do this prior to the college football playoff, but the calendar in college football is so atrocious, and the ridiculous timing of the transfer portal forced his hand, which is true. Because remember, it is a bit of a game of musical chairs. It is. There's only a certain number of really quality locations where you would want to go as a quarterback. And so here's a talented guy, sees the handwriting on the wall with Arch Manning behind him. Quinn Ewers, probably, maybe, good chance of him staying in Texas after this year. And so Maalik Murphy is thinking to himself, well, I want to stay, and yet I'm going to have to go and find my spot. And because of the limited window and how the window works, and there's also, by the way, a dead period coming up over the holidays where he can't go and visit. So it's like his hands were tied. And in so many ways, because of this ridiculous blender that we put ourselves in college football. He even said, he said to ESPN, I hate it. I'm super invested in this team, everything that we've done along the way and all the work we've put in together. It's hard to walk away, especially at this point in the season. Of course it is. And it's not his fault. And again, like I said, and I will continue to say this, his hand is being forced by what is a totally broken calendar. And let's talk about that calendar for a quick moment. So in this season, let's talk specific dates. Let's just kind of outline what we've got going on. So on December 2nd, we play conference championship games, okay? And we play those conference championship games, and 2 days later, the transfer portal opens, and there is a flood of names. What was it? I think this year it was like 1,000 names right away, just like boom. It's just poured into the transfer portal. So that opens. And by the way, on December 20th, we're going to have this early signing day for high school recruits. Because remember, apparently the old February signing day just wasn't working for everybody. And we wanted to make sure that players could sign and get into school so that they could graduate high school early and get in and play and participate in spring ball, and that it would be all easier for the coaches. And then they wouldn't have to retain their recruits all the way into February. And if they had a hard commitment, then that guy could sign, but we'll still have a signing day in February. Remember when that was a problem? Do you remember? Do you remember when that was top of mind for everybody? So what did? We put a Band-Aid put a Band-Aid over it, because that's what we do in college football, is that we run around to issues and we try to like patch them up. And so here's this early signing day that popped up a few years ago as a little patchwork fix over something that was a presumed problem. But now the unintended consequences are that you've got the portal open, you've got early signing day on the 20th, and oh, by the way, you've got semifinal games on January 1st. So what is he supposed to do? Again, this is a game of musical chairs. And this is why I feel terrible for Maalik Murphy. This 30-day winter transfer period runs from the 2nd. Then the recruiting dead period starts around December 18th this week. And because of that dead period, it's not really a full 30 days. So Murphy's got to jump into the portal so that he can take visits and he can communicate with coaching staffs and figure out their plans so that he can make an informed decision about his future. Even though if left to his own accord, he'd probably just want to stay with his team and compete in the college football playoff. I mean, can you imagine like what happens if Quinn Ewers goes down? He was the backup. He's supposed to play. Do none of us remember just a few years ago when Tua came off the bench? Now, it wasn't an injury in that case, but it was an ineffective Jalen Hurts in the first half of a national championship game that led Tua to play. What if that was in the cards for Maalik Murphy? And now that's stripped from him because we can't figure out the calendar. I mean, come on. Come on. What are we doing right now? Let's just call it what it is. It's asinine. The way that we go about business in FBS college football. It's crazy. Can you imagine? Let me just paint a scenario for you. Can you imagine? Let's say the NFL, right? You play your 17th game. Boom. We've got the playoffs. Here's the standings. Everybody's hyped, right? In a lot of ways, like you've got draft standings set. You've got the playoffs set. You've got matchups set. And the sport is like as hot as it is all year, right? And you just like, man, there's so much interest. By the way, in a program like this, our highest numbers happen when? Right at the end of the regular season, because like the interest is there. You build to this point. It's a crescendo, right? It's the end of the regular season. You've got a playoff. Can you imagine if the NFL just was like, you know what? We're going to take a month off. And hey, but in that month, before we start the playoffs, let's have the amateur draft. Let's have the draft, the NFL draft. Call it the amateur draft like it's baseball. It's not the amateur draft. Let's have the NFL draft. And you know what? Let's have free agency. And you know what? Let's like negotiate the CBA. You know, because you know, it'll be fine. Can you imagine that? Of course you can't. Why? Because that would be stupid. And yet, here we are in college football, where we build through what is the best and most robust regular season in all of sports. We end it with rivalry games that are historic and in a lot of ways more historic, more passionate, more tribal in a lot of ways than even the rivalries in the National Football League. He had 19 million viewers from Michigan, Ohio State. The Iron Bowl is epic. We get that, and we take a month off and have free agency and high school signing period. I mean, it is just mind-blowing how dumb that really is. I started thinking to myself, because you and I both know, I love this sport. I love it. I love most things. I used to say everything, but I love almost everything about this sport. And full disclosure, I've never been much of a soccer fan. Okay. Like it's not a sport that I participated in as a kid. It's not a sport that I got into much. Quite frankly, I'm 41 years old and I've been constantly turned off by the sport because I've been told that it's going to be the most popular sport in our country ever since I was 10. And guess what? It ain't. right? Like that's just what it is. Then, generally speaking, soccer fans get mad at you just for saying things like, I'm just not really into soccer. And they're like, you know what I'm talking about, right? And yet, one of my dearest friends and the guy that I am almost completely reliant on to do my job well, Steve, right here, part of the program, is a huge soccer fan, played soccer at Gonzaga University, really good player. And so Steve and I have had conversations about the sport, about soccer. And I remember early on when we first started working together, and I had this like, very American, very, big dumb jock type of mindset, football player, American sports, like soccer, whatever, soccer. And he started to, trying to teach me. And then part of my mindset was like, I don't understand it. What league is what? So wait, where do they compete? And wait, what's the Champions League? And but then isn't that the same team that's playing in? Wait, is that not the same league? And I was like, this is weird, And then they have like a transfer season where players can, they have a transfer. And I was like, man, this is too hard to follow. And it's like, okay, now imagine someone just walks in from Rome or London or wherever, right? Barcelona. And they've never really been a football fan, our football. And you're like, hey, man, college football is the best. You've got to get into college football. And they're like, okay, they're like, perfect. Explain it to me. And that's exactly when it's like, oh, so there's 10 conferences, but 5 of them are considered the power conferences. And the real powerful ones are called the Big Ten and the SEC. And then they say like, okay, well, who are the 10 schools in the Big Ten? And you're like, no. There's 16 schools and about to be 18 schools. And they're like, wait, there's how many schools in the Big Ten? You're like, yeah, but don't worry about it. But then there's another conference called the Big 12, and they had 10 schools, but now they've got 14 this year, but then they're going to 16. And they're like, wait, but it's still called the Big 12. Yeah. And their power conference. Okay, so like when do they play each other? Well, they kind of play each other in the non-conference. Like, how do they play each other? Is it based on when they finish? Well, no, it's like, their athletic directors just like agree 10 years prior to play. And they're like, so if they win their league, does that automatically get them? Well, no, it doesn't automatically, because there's this tribunal, if you will, and it's a committee, and they decide which 4 teams get to, and then you stop yourself and you're like, oh my gosh. Okay, so this is how I get to arrive at this point is the calendar. What are we doing? Can you imagine the NFL all of a sudden just taking a month off right after their regular season? It's like not capitalizing on all the hype, not capitalizing on all the positive ratings, not capitalizing at all. And they just took a month off and they're like, let's have the draft and free agency at the same time. It will be awesome. No, it's not awesome because the teams couldn't make quality decisions based on who are they going to draft, who are they going to sign. And by the way, even in that sense, it would have more structure than what we have. Because what we have, it's like there is no order to high school recruiting. You can just sign whoever you want. And there's no like transfer, it doesn't matter. We've got guys that can transfer after their first year or second year or third year. Are you a graduate? Is this the second time you're transferring? Do you have a COVID year of eligibility? It's not like you just know the players that will be free agents. So even if they did what I'm proposing and took a month off and had free agency and had the NFL draft, it would still have more order than what we try to do in college football. And this is crazy. So let's go back to where I started. Maalik Murphy having to transfer, and yet he's a backup quarterback for a team that's about to try to play a playoff game. Come on, folks. Like, we've got to fix this. We've got to fix this. There's no reason that we need to start taking a month off. All right, this is not the old bowl game. This is not the old bowl game. Let's move the playoff closer to the regular season. Let's capitalize on when our sport is the most popular, which is Thanksgiving and the week after. That's when the most people in our country are participating in and care about college football. So let's play our most important games right at that moment. Let's jam the college football playoff closer to the regular season. The only week that I am willing to say, okay, let's take a week and let's have a breath is right after the second, in this case, in this season, allow Army and Navy to play their game on a Saturday and then start the playoffs. That's the only reason I'd be willing to stop that 1 week. And then let's go. Let's go. And by the way, the transfer portal should not open up until at least January 1st. At least January 1st. And someone say like, well, how are they going to make decisions in order to be enrolled in school? And what are we going to do about finals? We can't do finals. Okay, but the FCS schools play right through finals. And every other sport in intercollegiate athletics play right through finals, whether it's the winter semester or whether it's the spring semester, fall semester or spring semester. And nobody bats an eye. But apparently in major college football, it's just like, you know what? Bridge too far. We can't have a playoff game on finals week. I think that we probably could. I know that I'm going in a lot of different directions here, but it's because you guys understand the calendar has got to be fixed. We need to finish the season and then get into player acquisition. It's better for everybody at that point. Then if you are going to get into the transfer portal, you don't have to make decisions like Maalik Murphy did. Then you can have a transfer portal that is done, and then you can have high school signing day in its traditional position. I don't think that there's any reason why that can't be the case. You know, these were Band-Aid fixes anyways of the way that we're doing things, and I think that they're backwards. We cannot continue to have this blender. Again, the analogy. Can you imagine if the National Football League took a month off before their playoffs started to have the draft and free agency all at the same time? Of course you wouldn't, because that would be crazy. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel, and you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.